Welcome to the Pathways to Success. I'm Julian Placino, recruiting professional turned success speaker, show host, and media entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to helping you find your unique pathway to success by having conversations that educate, inspire, and transform. Together, we'll interview some of the world's greatest leaders and uncover their secrets to success. Thanks for tuning in, and on to the show. Welcome to episode 204 of the Pathways to Success, where we have conversations with inspiring leaders to help you find your unique pathway to success. I'm Julian Placino, your host, and we have got a great show in store for you today. Today's episode is sponsored by my friends at City Central. City Central offers innovative workspaces for your business to thrive. City Central offers everything from private offices and co-working space to virtual offices and meeting rooms. City Central has 5 convenient locations in the DFW Metroplex, including North Dallas, Plano, Uptown, Richardson, and Fort Worth. If you use the promo code PATHWAYS, you'll get 50% off your first 3 months. So if you are looking for an innovative workspace for your business to thrive, check out citycentral.com for a free tour and use the promo code PATHWAYS to get 50% off your first 3 months. So before we get started, got to give a huge shout out here to everyone tuning into the live stream. As always, if you have questions, please do submit them through the chat as we have our conversation. I'm very excited to welcome to the Pathways to Success, Don Freeman, CEO at Fourth Dawn LLC. Don, welcome to the Pathways to Success. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Julian. This is an amazing opportunity, so thank you.
It's great to finally be with you, and of course, shout out to our mutual contact, Chip Rosales, if you're watching, managing partner at Rogue Fitness.
Yes.
At Rogue Marketing, and he's, I'm thinking fitness right now, CrossFit, right? Chip is actually going to be a guest on the show next week, so that's great. I appreciate that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Chip is an amazing individual, and definitely got to go rogue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So,
yes.
So Don, I want to share a little bit more about your story with our audience. So tell us, what is Fourth Dawn LLC?
So Fourth Dawn is a community social justice organization. So we specifically focus on helping corporations and organizations be more intentional about the work that they do from a social justice aspect. Really being intentional in terms of social responsibility, social service, and the political engagement, which is social justice as a whole.
And I know this is an area of work that you have been very passionate about for a long time. So what is your story and personal connection to this?
Yes, so I initially started being involved with social justice, but initially it was just focused on criminal justice reform. And with criminal justice reform, it's looking for ways to help individuals that are impacted by our justice system be able to transition back into the community. I started a nonprofit Region Hope initiative in 2017, and I've since then expanded. Doing this work, I realized it's more than just focusing on individuals that are impacted by the system, but it's also making sure the community is prepared to receive them and give them viable opportunities. And the more I started doing that research and being exposed to it, the more I realized there's a level of education that needs to happen, not only for individuals that live in the communities, but also companies, so that they can give people a fair chance.
And what is that education that needs to happen? What is the gap that you've seen?
I think it's just social discrimination as a whole at its face. And social discrimination is not just a racial issue, and that's something that you and I had talked about before. It's not just about race. It's about being intentional about looking at your practices and policies from employment to if you are a homeowner and you're renting out, or you have investment properties, who you rent to, what you do with your religious institutions, make sure that you're including all individuals, not just those that pay tithes, you know, et cetera, but being more inclusive. And that is a huge need that everyone across the country actually needs to address and contribute and be intentional about.
You know, this topic is very much a hot button topic for companies and persons all around the country, right? So I guess if you were to make the case, like the business case, why should companies care about this? What would you say?
I would say, you know, what we all experienced and lived through last year in May of 2020 with the George Floyd, murder. We all saw that on TV, and then everyone came out and made statements about social justice in general. But it's more than that. Making a statement is one thing. There's another thing to take tangible actions and steps towards improving opportunities and being equitable in the services that you provide, who you choose to do business with. Again, being very intentional about it. One of the things that, as I started doing the research for the formation of this organization, was just looking at giving trends right after that incident. So historically, when social justice causes, when people would contribute to those particular causes in terms of philanthropic giving, it was roughly around 5%. Then when that happened, it boomeranged up to like 60% of all given only in the month immediately following that, what we all experienced on TV with Mr. Floyd. And then it went right back down to that level. And so one of the concerns that I had, just as an individual, is why is the focus that people only want to engage when they see it in mass media and not making it part of their intentional activity? And again, applauding those, applauding and recognizing those that are doing the work, but really encouraging other organizations and businesses to make a concerted effort to address not only racial issues, but gender equality, homelessness, education. You can pick whatever cause. It doesn't have to just be racial at its face.
Sure.
To give back to your community, because your employees live within those communities, your consumers, your customers are in those communities. Therefore, you should want to be a part of that. That is your social responsibility.
So I know there's kind of two key words that we framed this initial conversation, which was social justice and also corporate responsibility.
Correct.
Help us unpack the definitions and how do they work together?
Yeah, so corporate social responsibility really is a framework that most people see, at least with corporations, as just a feel-good effort or initiative. And really, it's not about it being feel-good. It's about, again, making a conscious effort to have some involvement in your community, know what's going on and impacting your employees, because if they're not whole and sufficient or they're facing some other issues, then they can't be as productive in the workforce. Right. As well as, I started looking at what millennials care about, right? So it's predicted that by 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. Well, millennials are really cause-based. They don't really care about institutions. They care about causes. So if an organization has a diversity within its workforce, that's first. And then two, if they are, following some type of, engaged in some type of cause or human rights issue, that's more attractive to them. And they've actually stated in multiple surveys that they seek out organizations that are diversified and intentional in that way. And so for businesses and corporations, it's really important for you to engage, one, not only with your community, but then also understanding what matters to your workforce base, and that would include the millennials and Gen Zs.
That is where I'm very much deeply aligning with what you're saying, because my background is talent acquisition, it's recruiting, right? So when all things are equal, compensation and flexibility and all that other kind of stuff, companies want to know, what does this organization stand for? What is it they're doing outside of their business? What is the cause or mission that they're behind? And 100% that becomes a draw for the right individual who's also passionate about those things.
Exactly. And that's very important when you start thinking about, the baby boomers now retiring or, moving into, literally retirement.
Sure,
but when you start thinking about that next generation coming forward, you want to keep them actively engaged. Yes, money matters, but at the end of the day, they want to experience something else. They want their lives to have more meaning and more purpose, and they want to have fulfillment. And knowing that they're being supported or they're working for an organization that's not creating harms in their communities. And it really does mean something to the new generation.
I really see that.
Yeah.
I see that. You help increase the level of an employee base meeting because of a worthwhile cause.
Correct.
That acts as a draw, but also sort of elevates the workforce because of that unifying alignment.
Exactly.
I get that. I totally get that. That really makes sense. So something that you do for companies is this idea of a social justice audit.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
What does that even mean?
Right. So social audit is actually something that started in the UK many years ago. And it was their mechanism or way for measuring whether or not whatever cause or issue existed was it actually being achieved? And so having researched that particular process or technique, I really felt like it was something that would be extremely valuable for the things that the U.S. is experiencing now, specific to social justice. So it is not an audit like what you would do from a financial perspective. Even though I'm an accountant, it's not based on and that's my background. It's not based on accounting. It's about your social performance. So if you're saying you're supporting homelessness, what actionable steps have you taken? Doing strategic planning for the long term of, okay, if homelessness is the cause that your organization is supporting or that you want to eradicate, for example, then what are the specific steps that you have actually taken to achieve those goals? What are the objectives? What are the activities? And you do it on an annual basis, and then you can publicly share that information to show, no, this was the cause that we supported. These were the specific steps that we outlined in the objectives for any given year, and then you can report that that in your annual report. You could share that with your investors to show and to your potential employees, current and potential, this is what we're actually doing. And it's not just talking, but it's a tangible result that you could produce.
That is a great physical deliverable outcome.
Exactly.
Because when it comes to a lot of stuff like this, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to measure it.
Correct.
And now you're able to give companies a quantifiable way to do that.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. You got it.
What is your vision with all of this? What is it that you hope to accomplish with Fourth Dawn LLC?
My vision ultimately is to have a positive, one, galvanize, the corporate America, but also to positively impact the social causes that exist. We all know that they're there. They're not secrets. They exist. But how can we effectively do it where it's not an adversarial thing, not waiting until it becomes some hot topic that occurs in a particular, I think it was an instance with Gap a few years ago where they had a shirt with a young man and it had a monkey on it, and the young man he was an African-American young boy. And then it was all this uprise, boycott and all these other things. And again, I think it was just a level of not having a level of awareness that how can this be perceived by our consumers, by our internal and external stakeholders, essentially. I think when organizations are very intentional in looking at not only their policies and practices, but then also their products and their buying practices, different suppliers that they leverage in providing that diversity, then they can have a positive impact in the community, and it's meaningful for those individuals, whether they're marginalized or they just want to support a cause. That is ultimately my vision, is for every small and mid-sized business. I'm not really focused on large corporations right now. Most of them tend to try to do something. But for small and medium-sized businesses, for them to actually be more engaged with social justice causes, it doesn't have to be extremely elaborate. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. They don't have to create new departments to manage it. They can leverage our organization to help them move forward and just do something. No matter how small or how big, it makes a difference.
That is excellent, and I really do love that.
Thank you.
Dawn, before we take our commercial break here, I have to ask you this. Yeah. There are some voices out there speaking about diversity that I just flat out don't agree with, and I shared that with you ahead of time.
Yes.
And sometimes when you talk about justice, it's almost divisive.
Correct.
But how is it the way that you are implementing it more of a unifying force than divisive?
Well, a lot of it for me is faith-based, right? And from a faith-based perspective, my family is extremely diverse, right? So my family comes in every shade, race that you can possibly think of. So I personally just don't have that perspective that it's only this cause or that, a race thing. It's not just a race thing, because I've seen it happen to all of my family members where there's some level of social discrimination. Justice in and of itself is fairness, right? Being morally right and morally conscious about your activities and what you do, not only within business, but in your personal life as well. So to be just, you have to do just things, and that's what I support.
I love that, and what resonated with me is you said faith-based.
Correct.
Because when you appeal to the faith and you really believe and see it that way, it sort of transcends all of these differences.
The other things don't matter. We're all the same at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, Dawn, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors and more with your keys to success when we return.
You want to transition out of your career and do something tech related. CodeUp is the place for you. When I came to CodeUp, I was actually working at a chain hair salon. It was just starting not to be for me anymore. My goals were to never work a weekend ever again, to have full health care and benefits, and to just have more time with my son. And now I've met all of those goals. I don't have any regrets. I just regret not coming sooner when I saw those billboards and I was driving down the highway.
And we're back with Don Freeman, CEO at Fourth Dawn LLC.
Yeah.
Don, I want to jump into now your keys to success.
Yeah.
The show is called Pathways to Success.
Correct.
Because I love learning from leaders who've achieved great results, because they sort of leave breadcrumbs of like, what is it that you've done to become successful?
Right.
And I want to start discovering what those are now.
Okay.
So one of your first keys to success is faith and integrity.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so even right before the commercial break, I just talked about my belief system and my faith. I am a Christian. I don't hide that. And for me, I really focus on Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40, and it talks about the two greatest commandments. The first is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And a lot of what has really guided me, sometimes challenging, I won't deny that, is really seeing myself in another person's shoes, that empathy factor, and realizing that but for someone else seeing and speaking life into me and giving me opportunities and helping me move forward, I would have never accomplished what I've been able to accomplish. And so I try to provide those opportunities to other individuals and bring them along with me, and or provide them with that guidance to move forward. Integrity in and of itself is, again, that moral compass for me that, you know, regardless of what any human thinks, I'm accountable to God at the end of the day. A lot of my life over the last probably 20 years, and I wasn't there initially, it took me a while to get there to really understand it, but it's for His purpose. You know, my life is His purpose, it's His, you know, everything I do is for Him to get glory. So I have to be mindful of how I handle myself in business, how I handle myself in my personal life, and really being intentional about those actions, because at the end of the day, He's going to say either well done, thy good and faithful servant, or He's going to say, okay, you were a horrible, you know, servant because you didn't do what I put you on the earth to do. And not that I believe He's a God of punishment, but I do believe I have a responsibility now that I am aware of what my calling is to, you know, make a difference in the world. And so that's what really guides my every step.
So I'm a Christian as well.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times people sort of get it wrong in thinking that being a Christian is all about being good all the time and things are awesome and things go my way because I'm a Christian, God's on my side. But oftentimes we find out we struggle 100%. Right. So I'm very curious though, what would you say is the most recent example of how perhaps your faith or believing in God and living your life within the Christian worldview actually helped you in business and life? Tell us that.
Well, I would say how I even got to the creation of Fourth Dawn LLC. I took a huge leap of faith and left corporate America. And I did it because I believe that's what God had called me to do. And I will say the last 6 months of my life has been extremely challenging because, you know, I know what I felt as the calling. I really, truly believe that's what God wanted me to do. But the stars were not aligning that way. And so I had to keep, you know, persevering and really moving forward and saying, okay, it'll happen. I have to do, there's work I have to do. I love an example, and I believe it's Bishop Jake says that, you know, when you pray to God and you ask for something, God, I want an oak tree, and God gives you a seed, and you're like, that's not what I asked for. But the oak tree is in the seed. You have to plant it, you have to water it, you have to nurture it, and then it'll grow. And that's my most recent example with the LLC. You know, God put this vision in my heart, and He gave me a seed. And I'm like, I didn't want the seed, I wanted the whole tree. But you know what? It's something that you learn in that process of doing that, tilling the ground and doing the work to make you, one, appreciate it more, and two, understand that God is faithful, that at the end of the day, you don't miss out. You have to work a little harder, but He's with you along the way, and that's more than I can ever ask for.
I think what came to me, I forgot who said this, but it makes sense in light of what you said.
Yeah.
It's something to the effect that obedience precedes understanding.
Correct.
A lot of times you can't really see what God's doing in your life until you look back.
Yes.
But if you honestly are doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, there's almost a kind of like a loving energy force that's allowing you to move forward despite how crazy things might be in your life.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you can really actually experience that until you have experienced it.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know, you hear other people's experience, and then you're like, oh, wow. It almost seems like a cakewalk for them because you're seeing the end result.
Yeah.
You don't see all of the journey of how they got there. And that's one of the things, at least with where I am in my life, and I would say probably where I've been the last 5 years of my life, of being very open and transparent about my journey. It was not a straight path. It definitely had a lot of hills and valleys, but I survived it, and at the end of the day, it was worthwhile. But I had to be courageous enough to actually go for it. Most people settle for the mundane and the complacency, and it's easy to do when you get a comfortable life. Like, this is comfortable, I don't want any more, I don't want to do anything else. But when you're drawn to something, it requires you to, you know, take that leap of faith. And so that was definitely a huge life lesson for me. And I'm still learning. And I'm still learning. So you can't stop learning. You have to keep growing and expanding your faith.
Absolutely.
Love it.
I want to talk about reinvention.
Yes.
It seems like it's something that's happening in your life, that's something that's happened in my life, and something that's just so important to be able to get out of your comfort zone and succeed, whatever that might mean to you.
Correct.
So tell us, where do you want to start with reinvention?
Well, reinvention, I'm a big quote person, so if anybody
Me
looks
too.
at any of my social media pages, they'll see quotes all over the place. But there's a quote by John Maxwell, change is inevitable, growth is optional, right? So putting those two things in context, well, how do you do that? Because there are some changes that you can't control and there are some that you can. Do you grow from them? And when I really look back over my more than 40 years on the earth, right, that it was all about reinvention. I had to make myself over. I had to learn new things. I had to stretch myself. I had to do, you know, go outside of my comfort zone a lot to get to this place. And all of it added, like, God wastes nothing. That's a quote from this gentleman that I work with on the nonprofit side, Jason Cole. God wastes nothing.
Jason Cole?
You know Jason Cole?
Jason Cole in Prison Reform.
Yes.
He was actually on an episode of the show that never aired because there was like this. Yeah, he's great. And Sherry Garcia.
Yes.
Sherry's been on twice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know both of them.
Awesome.
See, look, small world.
Very cool.
Right, small world. But Jason always says God wastes nothing, and that's exactly right. It builds, right? And you don't really realize it in the moment. Reinventing, and when I think back to my early childhood years, I didn't grow up in the most ideal conditions, but I got to a point where I knew I wanted more. Something more was calling me, so I evolved then, and I went to school and I earned a bachelor's degree and an MBA, and I raised three children on my own. They're all adults, well, with the exception of one, just turned 15, almost there. But going through that process, working a full-time job, I started off in accounting, went into project management, then into philanthropic efforts, and now taking this startup venture. It wasn't for me. I couldn't be stagnant. I used the change to motivate me to want to grow and to be better than what I was before. But again, it was very intentional. So I made a plan for myself, and I knew this is the end result. And I just kept telling myself, if you keep doing the work, it'll pay off in the end. And it absolutely has been true for me thus far. And so I just encourage anyone that, regardless to where you are at any stage in your life, think about reinventing yourself. Think about how you've reinvented yourself up to this point and how it's paid off for you, what worked, what didn't work, and then continue moving forward. At the end, it will happen. You just have to have that determination.
Part of reinvention
Yes.
is you have to get out of your comfort zone. To get out of your comfort zone, you have to experience fear.
Correct.
How have you historically pushed past your own fears?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's still real for me right now, right? It's scary. You think about the traditional business or just going to school, right? Especially getting degrees. You get a degree, you work a job, you work your way up the ladder, you do that for 40 years or so, and then you retire. Like, that was what we were taught. And for all of the individuals that are entrepreneurs or doing something on the side, that has a fear factor because you're being exposed to a lot of things that you may not necessarily know, and it's not the traditional norm. It's not just going through the day-to-day steps of go work for another person, but go step out on faith and do it on your own. It is extremely intimidating. It's very scary, but it's moving past that and reflecting on your experiences, the skills and the talents that you have, and having enough strength and courage and faith in yourself, and also knowing that God's on your side, you can accomplish it. And that's what I'm doing. I have done, and that's what I'm still doing now, is just really believing that, okay, I have the gifts, I have the skills, I have the talent. Now I have to have enough confidence and courage in myself to move forward, and the possibilities are endless.
I think something that has helped me in the past overcome some fear is having a really big why. That's very famous from Simon Sinek. But what goes bigger than that is that, like, a reason and a purpose.
Right.
Karen King is in the studio right now, a previous guest on the show, a very good friend of mine, and she has seen me sort of transition from corporate to doing whatever it is that I'm doing right now, right? It's like I left one of the best corporate recruiting jobs ever in like history to go start a show and do consulting, right? What is it that I'm doing? But I had a reason, I had a why. It was like, what is the maximal expression of my talents and abilities that God has given me, and how can I maximally impact the most that I possibly can?
Exactly.
I say that because I want to know, you mentioned God revealed to your calling. What is your personal mission and purpose?
My personal mission is to impact those that haven't had those opportunities, haven't had that exposure. You know, at first I was very limited in my thoughts of what I thought the calling was. I thought it would just help people in prison, right? Prison and jail. But that's very limiting. Going beyond that to, well, what happens when they get out of prison and jail, right? They come home, they're in a community, and then what? And so really expanding that of, it is in the same vein of helping people impacted by the system, but it's so much, the need is so much bigger than just that. It's also helping them when they come home, helping the people around them to be able to support them. I was personally impacted with having different loved ones being impacted by the criminal justice system, and knowing what that looks like as a family member just supporting someone. And whether they were in jail or in prison, maybe they struggled with an addiction. Those are real challenges that a lot of people face. They may not talk about it because that's not something that's socially acceptable, but they experience it, whether it's them immediate family member or a neighbor. Someone knows, 6 degrees of separation, right? You know someone that has had this experience in trying to support a loved one who may be struggling in one area or another, and not to say you have to do things for them, but teach them how to move forward. That, I believe, is my mission and my purpose, is to teach other people that if I can do it, again, starting at this not so good place and to get where I am now, you can do it as well.
That is very inspiring.
Yes, thank you. One
final key to success here, knowing who's on your boat. What does this mean, and how can our audience apply this in their own lives and careers?
I really struggled with this one this morning as I was thinking through it, because when I initially shared it with you, I was thinking one thing, but the more when I kept just revisiting, like, what is that impact? What message do I want to leave for today's show? I really settled on this. People are in your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And the decision is up to you which one. Right? And really where we tend to hurt ourselves is when we try to put people in categories that they really don't fit. And you have to know that. And there's a level of discernment that you have to have. And then there's also, I think, a process that you go through. I use an analogy at a workshop that I did before of, I always had, for whatever reason, I had this mentality of, I see potential in people and I want to put everybody on my boat. And even though they may not have it all together, okay, I'm going to put them on my boat and we're all going to, be successful and accomplish this great thing together. Until rowing that boat got extremely hard for me, because they're riding on the boat and I'm working. They're just going along for the ride. And so it was difficult for me to make decisions of when is it time to let this person off the boat so someone else can go on, so we can move forward. But really thinking through that, even in the context of business, sometimes there are people that they always say you should hire people that has a better skill set in a particular area than you do, so to challenge you. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room kind of thing. And, you have to have that awareness of, okay, what purpose does, this individual or, even relationships with other business entities, what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? And when it's over, let it be over.
Let it be over.
Instead of dragging it out. I really struggled with that. I would say probably through most of my career until I started doing things on my own and understanding, well, if I'm dragging everybody along, I can't move forward because I'm trying to bring them with me. I'm trying to bring people with me that aren't prepared.
Right.
And so making sure that I have people that are prepared on the boat with me, and that's what I would encourage the listeners as well, is making sure you have people that are prepared on your boat. And when the time is right, you can always go back for the people that you had to put off the boat for some period of time. But just being cognizant of all of that. People are in your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime, and you have to make sure you have it in the right context as you're going through not only your professional journey, but your personal journey as well.
I think that's great advice. And the big key takeaway I'm getting from there is, I'm a super people pleaser, right? And it's hard for me to have these confrontational conversations, but you can almost, there's a loving reason to create intentional separation between you and certain persons.
Right.
And that's what I'm getting from that.
Right, exactly. And even with that, with me, and again, a lot of it is just my faith-based. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, she's only a faith-based person. It's applicable in business in every area. Even when I do have to let someone off of the boat, I don't do it in a way, I really toil over this. My fiance is in the studio with us. I really toil over how to do it in a way where I'm not tearing people down. I don't look for ways that I'm just gonna tell people off or give them a piece of my mind. I don't do that. I really look for ways. I want to be straightforward of this is the situation, but I don't do it in a harmful way where I'm creating a struggle or a barrier for them in the future. So, when you have to let people off your boat, do it with good intentions. Make sure your heart and your intentions are pure. Do what you have to do and then move forward. Don't continue to dwell on that. And that's kind of me preaching to the choir because I am a people pleaser as well.
Yeah.
It can be a struggle, but knowing when and how to do it is the keys.
Dawn, I like to wrap up shows by doing sort of a fun lightning round that we kind of get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
But before we jump into that, thinking about our audience, corporate professionals, entrepreneurs, people who want to succeed in life, what is your best advice to them about achieving success in life and business?
Oh, best advice. I would say take a risk. Take risks. Low risk, low reward, high risk, high reward. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you have all the things that you need to be able to move forward. So whether that's education, whether that's finances, before you jump out of the boat or go into this new thing, make sure you're prepared and plan for the unknown. But take the risk.
Take a risk.
Take a risk. I did that when I moved to Texas. It was like literally I had this job offer and I had 3 little kids and I'm like, do I do this? But I did. And it was the best decision I could have ever made was just pick up, move halfway across the country. It was scary. It was risky, but it was worth it.
That is great
Yes.
advice.
Thank you.
So Dawn, I want to jump into our lightning round here.
Okay.
So our viewers can learn just a little bit more about you from a personal sense, and we'll start with, what's your favorite food?
Oh my goodness, my favorite food. I love crabs. I love blue crabs because I lived in Virginia for such a long time. So I love blue crabs, and they're really hard to find here. So I settle for snow crab legs, but that's one of my favorite foods.
Snow crabs.
Snow crabs.
Music. What are you listening to right now?
I love all kinds of music. Oh goodness. So I'm one of these weird people that I don't listen to the radio.
Okay.
I don't listen to the radio, so I'm totally oblivious to anything new out. But I like a lot of conscious music. So artists like Jill Scott or Let Us See, India.Arie. I like those types of artists. R&B and of course gospel. I gotta have some gospel music in there.
Of course, you got to get the gospel in there, right?
Absolutely.
What is something about you that when people learn, they find very surprising?
Oh, Probably a couple of things. I've already shared that I have 3 children, but I have one. Well, they're all having a birthday. So I have a 22-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 15-year-old.
Wow.
And most people's like, you don't look old enough to have, children that old. I am. But yeah, that's what my children are. My pride and joy. They're why I do what I do, and. My oldest son graduated high school. My middle son is currently going into his sophomore year of college, and my 15-year-old is in all AP advanced placement classes.
Wow.
She's taking Japanese, and she wants to go to school in Japan. I don't know about that when she goes to college, but she's aspiring to that. But I'm a very proud mother. They're the reason I have been very intentional about how I raise them, where I raise them, the things that I expose them to, and a lot of my journey, both professionally and personally, I want them to use as a launching point for them, so they don't just have to figure it out blindly, but they have me as an example, and they can kind of look back and say, my mom did that, I could do it too.
Well, I think you're blazing an amazing trail, Dawn.
Thank you.
You really are.
Thank you.
So final question here for you, Dawn. The show is called The Pathways to Success. How do you personally define what success is?
Oh, goodness. Well, for me, and where I am at this stage in life, I would say success is what do you do for other people? I tend to be in different circles, and some people will say like, oh, you're thinking about helping others, and I'm just thinking about making money. Well, that's okay. Everybody's at a different stage, and money is a necessary resource in order to accomplish those things. Without money, I couldn't do what I do, so I do understand that. But again, for me, it's success is making sure my household is stable, but then also am I looking out and providing for other people as much as I can. That, to me, that's how I define success for me.
How are you helping other people?
How I'm helping other people.
I love that.
Yeah.
Dawn, this has been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you
Thank
coming
you, Julie.
on the show.
Absolutely.
If you would, tell our audience how to connect with you, follow you, work with you, tell us all that right into here.
Absolutely. So you can connect with us on our website, www.fourthdawn.com, or you can visit our social media pages on Facebook and LinkedIn for Fourth Dawn LLC, or you can follow me, Dawn Freeman. I am on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. There are a lot to manage. Chip used to manage my social media. Now I got to do it by myself, and it is a lot. But I would love to, connect with you. And, anytime, if you need anything, you have any questions about anything that I've said today, please, please, please reach out.
And we'll make sure to have all of your contact information in the show notes as well. Dawn, this was a true pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Julian. This is great.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of The Pathways to Success. Please do, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of The Pathways to Success.